Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome as a call to order the January 31st, 2022 special meeting of Escambia County School Board. Whether you're joining us via live stream or in the audience, we appreciate your interest in the education of students in Escambia County. I ask you that you silence your cell phones at this time. Adoption agenda. We'll begin with the adoption agenda. Mr. Superintendent, are there any additions, deletions to your recommended agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do have under Section 3, Human Resources, Item C is an amendment to out of field.
State statutes and school board rules require that the changes made to the agenda after the publication be based on finding a good cause determined by the person designated to preside over the meeting and stated in the record. Is there any objection from any board member to the additions or deletions?
Mr. Chair, could I ask why, to state why these were added? Because I don't remember.
Yes, ma'am.
One of our schools submitted the information at a late date, and it was more important to have it added than it would be to scrutinize why they missed the deadline.
So it's just
there.
additional that we're not.
Yes, ma'am.
I know we continue to try to get as up to date as possible. And
Yes,
so-
ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. So, no objection.
Any other comments?
Not now.
Okay. If not, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote.
Paul?
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. The first item is administrative appointment. Is there a motion?
Shall we have the superintendent tell us what it is?
Well, Bill, I don't know, because I'm going by the script that young lady made.
I'd be happy
Go
to
ahead.
share that with you. We have today Sean Roby, currently a resource teacher at Warrington Middle School, moving to high school assistant principal at Pensacola High School.
Okay. And I will tell you, we've had a discussion about this. Usually you have a motion and then a discussion, but that's fine. We'll do it that way. All right. Is there a motion to approve the administrative appointments?
I'll make a motion to approve the administrative appointment as presented by the superintendent.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, please vote.
Well, that's all right, yeah.
Oh, well, go ahead, Paul. Do you have
No,
something? Go ahead.
Just for the sake of everyone, when the superintendent had first said something to me about this, my question to him was to move somebody from Warrington Middle School gives me great concern. And the superintendent has assured me that things are in place to have things run smoothly and to replace and to do the stuff that needs to happen for Warrington Middle School. I just wanted everybody else to know that.
Yes, and if I may add
Oh, yeah.
comment to that, I too was very concerned with that, and we were able to find a person to follow Mr. Roby, and that the specific work that he has been doing is working with our Achieve Academy and the students who were at Warrington and going to that particular school, which has a tie back to the school. So the job works at both campuses and kids who are currently on both campuses.
That's that famous tie back you're talking about with the students?
Yes.
Any other
Okay.
discussion on that?
Is you able to begin this position immediately?
Yes. Yes.
Because I'm sure a high school principal with a vacancy is not a happy high school principal.
That's yes, that was our goal, was for tomorrow. So, yes. Okay. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Paul.
Here.
Mr. Roby?
I fall down with this.
We're going to see Sean.
Congratulations, welcome to the AP.
Congratulations.
It was very nice to meet you all this morning. Thank you very much. The journey that led me to standing before you today started a long time ago in a place far away from here. About 8,743 miles from here, actually, on a hilltop school in a rural area of Eswatini, at that time known as Swaziland, a small country in southern Africa. That was the first time I stepped into a classroom teaching high school science in a small school a long way from anywhere. Following my time in Africa came 15 years in the alternative education world at a wilderness program for youth at risk. Then, with the encouragement of my wife, 10 years in the ECSD at Pine Forest High School. Add on a master's degree, acceptance into the ECSD administrator pool, and here I am. There are so many people who have been a part of this journey, and I would like to thank a few of the most significant. To begin with, Jeff Elliott, who gave a guy from the woods a chance to be a high school science teacher. With that, my years at Pine Forest High School began, and there were several who were instrumental to my growth into an administrator at Pine Forest. Brian Freeman, who was a mentor to me as I entered the discipline side of school operations and began to turn an eye toward a goal in administration. Laura Touchstone, a true innovator who brought me along on her journey through the PLC world and onward as an amazing principal at Pine Forest High School. And Emily King, both a dear friend and longtime professional colleague who has guided me through the process of becoming an administrator. And finally, my wife, Amy. Ahead of me by a few years on administrator path, but always my biggest fan and source of encouragement. And now, after all that, I have a tremendous opportunity to bring together all I have learned in the last decade from so many amazing mentors. I now go forward on my own path to carry on the tradition that is Pensacola High School and make it the best institution that I can. Thank you for your belief in me, and I won't let you down. I look forward to the opportunity to impact the lives of the students, faculty, and staff at Pensacola High School, and go Tigers!
Is his wife here? Did a good job.
Congratulations. Okay, our next item is the amended out of field. Do we have a motion?
Do you have any
We have
comment?
appointments
Any
first,
appointments?
and then out
Huh?
of field.
Yeah, but we have to appoint some people first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put my pen rolled down. Okay, moving into human resources, the first item is appointments. Can I have a motion?
Move we approve the appointments as recommended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm glad we're still appointing.
Appointing people, that's right.
Yes.
All right. If not, please vote. Now,
Motion carries 5-0.
all right, our next item is the amended out of field. Do we have a motion?
I would wonder if we can do B and C together since they cover, both of them are out of field.
This is one of the glitches that we're trying to sort out with board docs and how to do amendments.
Okay.
From what I understand, B should now just be an information item. That's the original item as it was presented. It is now only an information item. And then C is the true item, and it should contain all of the original appointments, out-of-field appointments, and additionally the ones that have been added.
So in other words, we don't need to vote on B, we just need to vote on C.
It's just for information. There was some discussion about how do we, in board docs, preserve the record of what was originally presented, and we're still trying to sort out what's the best way to do that, but this is kind of what what has been come up with at this point.
How are you going to put it into the agenda details? Because I see now that it says information, but, so did you go back in and make that information?
I'm not making
Okay.
I'm just explaining
Okay.
how
All
it
right.
has been explained to me. Mrs. DeWeese would know best how it is
Okay.
reflected in the minutes. This is just what IT came up with as a solution for how we can reflect the historical data and get the new information on the Board Docs platform.
Can-
Go
if I
ahead,
might. So why is it needed for historical purposes if C is actually the item with all that was in B to begin with?
That's not something I weighed in on.
Okay.
I asked that question myself, but
Could we ask Mr. Weiss or the superintendent to, because, I mean, we're not the first district to use this item.
it's my understanding that Dana and Elizabeth are going to an administrators conference soon, and that was one of the top things that they were going to discuss with others about how are you doing this. I've looked at other Board Docs agendas around the state. I've seen some that do it the way we do. I've seen others that just, as you suggested, let's just put the word amend to give the heads up that this is what's been added. They underline the item that's new so that it's clear what's been added. But, you know, that's an operational decision that's been made at this point. But it is my understanding that they are still looking at ways to make it a clearer process.
Because even on the old agenda, there was, you know, when an amendment was made and they did the amendments separately, then it didn't always have the entire thing, and I think we fixed that. So, okay. So in the future, I will look for when it changes to information. I didn't notice it.
So have we made the proper motion yet?
Oh, well, we'll need a motion on,
C.
So we need a motion to approve. I would like to make a motion to approve item C, the amended out-of-field recommendations.
I'll second.
right?
Is that correct, ma'am?
Any more discussion on this item? Superintendent, you okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, so I did not get any speaker forum, so we don't have to worry about public forum. Is there anything for the good of the order? I know me and Patty will be heading to Tallahassee to advocate for public education Wednesday and Thursday, Friday.
I'll be out at a training in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
Wednesday,
there,
Thursday,
too.
Friday. Yeah.
I had a chance to talk to Senator Baxley at the prayer breakfast. So he
Yes.
about with the school board situation, you know, salary. So he sees what the issue is. The issue of a couple of school districts in South Florida impacting 57 or 60 school districts, you know, school boards. So he seemed to understand it fully.
Good.
Yes.
I will be Wednesday at City Hall for a meeting that's been called between community leaders, and we got an invitation, and since you were out of town, I accepted to go to represent the school district. But I think it's more towards what to do with the military and the community, from what I understand of it. But I will be there, and I'll be at the science fair representing the board.
Yes, because I'll be out of town.
But since we're here and it says the public forum, at our last board meeting, the public forum, one of the speakers brought up the idea of changing things with the testing for IB. And I don't know what your follow-up has been, or if there has been time for you to have follow-up in that regard, Mr. Superintendent. But I would like to say that I am opposed to changing the way it has historically happened. I would like to recommend to you that we stay with what has happened in the past for the testing of our IB students into the IB program.
Could you share reasons why?
We have been very successful, and as students who've been through that program have had that process in place since its inception. It has never been a problem with students either being engaged, attending, involved. I think that our success rate with it has come to the point where at some point it's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't know what precipitated the need to change things that have worked consistently. And I think that those students have shown and proven themselves to be as engaged as anybody would. They are as focused on what they need to do, and I think we need to give them the time to be successful in terms of finishing our requirements for graduation, but then to finish with enough time to do what the IB requests above and beyond. I've had several parents talk to me about it, and their concern is, it's like we're changing the rules in the middle of the game. Students have prepared themselves for 3 years, but now this final year, this is what they were looking to do, and they're going to have to change how their processes work, and I just don't see why there's the need to change it.
So now, are you referring to the timeline or the location?
Both.
Okay.
I think that it should stay what has historically happened and historically been done for the IB students at Pensacola High School. I don't know what precipitated the need to make the change. Do you have an idea to that? Somebody said, hey, we're having problems with students showing up. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. People are not scoring the way they need to score. Any negative things that have been presented as to why things aren't working the way they are, or they have been in the past?
I think, and I might not have all the details to share with you, I think what I've heard is that this movement started a couple years ago. It didn't manifest itself because we haven't had for 2 years now the testing. I think the biggest thing is the proximity. It's closer to the campus. It's right down the street from the campus, actually. And the facilities are adequate. In fact, they're good facilities, actually, to do it. So I think it was really driven from a point of efficiency in that manner, that it's just closer.
Paul, and I similarly share some concerns because, right now we're competing for students. We have to compete. And I'm not sure if this is really the way to go. If it was working great, why rock the boat on that IB program? Mm-hmm. So it may be easier for our administration. I don't know, but I believe I'd like to know why we're changing it, because it has worked well, and we've got a great program down there, and we're going to have enough impacts in the local area. I would like to see it maintain the same process. And with that, I'll see if my other board members have a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess my first question is the attendance during the last month a problem for the county in counting the students?
Well, that was the original issue, and we have looked into that, and we actually are going to be fine with that particular issue.
Okay, because I'm not familiar with their schedule, had no idea what they were doing. And, as some people said, you leave it alone. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But the problem now is, since certain people have brought it forth to the public, I have people that want to know, why do they have to go to school the last month?
Yes.
Why are they getting to do something and we don't get to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And the director can correct me if I'm wrong. We used to have a program in the north end of the county that graduated a week early. And that was kind of their thing. But we stopped that because there was a counting problem. Am I wrong there, great director of high school education? You weren't the director when this happened, but...
And it depends on the year and what happens during our school year. If we have storm days, if we have snow days, if we have ice days, it starts taking away from our instructional hours. If you want the full FTE, then you need to make sure, because it happens at the end of the year, if we say now we're going to do it and then things change, which they can, then, we may run out of hours to get the full FT. If you're okay with not getting the full FT, which I don't think Mr. St. Cyr will be, then, we need to stay the course. But it also has been, the question has been, why some do it and others do not. And I know the exams are rigorous, and they spend most of their, it takes a pretty good part of their day in the test. There's several hours. So it's not like they're, taking a 90-minute test and then leaving. So and the schedule's crazy, as many of you know. It's all over the place when you're trying to get an AP test and IB test in. So we've looked at it, as Dr. Smith said, and we do have the time as we speak today. We do have the time in there. We have built in, and that's thanks to you supporting that 7th period. If we didn't have 7th period, we'd be in trouble because we wouldn't have the extra hours. We've already been in trouble. We'd be trying to make up something. So we appreciate that. That gives us that cushion that we need to do things that are good for students, and also in case there's some type of situation where we need extra days, we have it in there. So, but I want to say this as far as making the change and the move. You have 2 administrators, the IB coordinator and the principal, and the principal was at a school where she is very familiar with IB, and you have to trust them. They're running the school, and I think you would need to hear their concerns about UWF. We've done that in the past, and it's challenging. And Ms. Miller will tell you the other day, because she shared with the superintendent and I, when they had a group of students at UWF that day, they went in lockdown, completely lost. Those things happen there too. So secured area. UWF is no more secured, and maybe not as much because it's so big as our areas. So finding Spencer Bibbs, they got creative, and that's just easier for them. And then there's a lot of issues with test security and getting things. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So I trust the administration. If they felt like the change, they've been talking about it for a long time. Those of you that know Laura Brewer, she was excellent, and she would run herself ragged, and I'd be talking to her at 7 and 8 o'clock at night when she was finalizing things and trying to get everything secured and all that and ready for the next day. So I don't stand before you telling you I know all the reasons, but when it's in our control, we don't do things out of our control, but if it's in the administrator's control, I try to support what they're asking. So I certainly am willing to come back to the board with the details of why, and I know some of them, but it might be better that Ms. Miller, Dr. Smith, that's your call, but if not, I can certainly do that and say these are the reasons why we want to change. It hasn't always been at UWF, according to Laura Brewer. And so Ms. Hightower knows a whole lot more about that probably than I do. So her children are there. So I'll let Ms. Hightower weigh in on what she knows too. But I do trust them when they say this is going to be better. It's going to be better. Change is hard sometimes. And but I don't know that UWF, it is difficult in other ways, which we don't have time for today, but that is challenging. But I'm not saying it's a bad place, but I think we have a place that's satisfactory, really close to the school. And it takes a lot of people to administer those tests as well. And, we're so shorthanded in the schools now, I'm very concerned because, 24 vacancies at Pine Forest on Friday, unfilled. And that's just the one I know off the top of my head because I was there with Dr. Smith. That will put you in a bind when you're testing. That's a terrible bind to be in. So I do trust the administration to make a sound decision. I appreciate your input, and I'm sorry that Soraya left. But I'll follow back up with her, and we'll get more details. Any other questions for me?
I guess it goes back to, this is the first that I heard about any kind of changes or any kind of problems with the way that it was done. In the past, at least anecdotally, talking with people here and there that say, oh, we had these problems with this, or this didn't happen, or that didn't happen, whatever. And I go back to this. At this point, with the change and going to Spencer Bibbs, it's going to be our teachers who are going to be proctoring. So they're going to leave Pensacola High School in their planning periods to go over. if we have 24 teachers missing from Pensacola High at that time, who's going to proctor?
Yeah, well, she'll have a backup plan, trust me, and at least she has more control over that than having, she may have to pull in some outsiders, you're right. I mean, you have to be careful who is your proctor, who the
Right,
proctors are, but.
In the past, they have had parents that also serve as proctors. So I don't know that that's a change that's going to be made, but in the past, they've had parents that were proctors. I was a proctor, so.
I guess I was, had I heard anything about there was a difficulty with the way it has been going on, or there were problems, or things didn't work out.
It's not a difficult, we've been talking about 2 years, but with the pandemic, see, you would have already had, it's just delayed everything, because it's the last 2 years, testing's been just totally different.
Right.
So it was out there, and then, we've just figured out what we had to do as we moved along in the spring, because it's so crazy because of the pandemic. And, IB last year just making their announcement how they were going to administer exams, that kind of all's coming at the last minute, so we're trying to scramble getting things done. And that's true with everything. I mean, it's not just, IB's a fabulous organization. They're very organized, but it's just, the least little change, it really throws a monkey wrench in it for us too, because your points are well taken. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and the same way as removing teachers from the school to do that, but when you're closer, it helps too, because there's a lot of travel. It seems like it's not, but that you spend a lot of time
Right.
on the road, so that just making it closer makes Miss Miller, I talked to her Friday, she feels better that it's right around the corner, and that, they've got Spencer Beds is a nice location. We know the parking, but
Right.
they're making arrangements for that to not be as problematic either. So, but as far as the change and not knowing about it, they've been talking about it, but we still don't know what it looks like this year for sure. We don't know what's going to happen. Right now, we're planning as we normally do with, yes, we're giving exams, and I think we will, but things can change.
Well, maybe at our next workshop, we could put this on, and Ms. Miller or somebody from the school could come forward and give us more information as to what's happening. I know that the schools have the ability to operate, and they need to do what they see fit. I'm not trying to circumvent or to take away the authority of principals and leadership. And I support the leadership, and I always will. But I also need to be able to answer questions if people ask me. And it's like, well, where'd this come from? I don't know. It's the first I've heard of it. And it's like, what do you mean you never heard of it? Like, it's a reflection of poor communication.
Yeah. Dr. Edler?
Can I?
I'm sorry. Let Dr. Edler, she's District 3, that's her school. You got a comment? I'll get right to you, Bill.
The IB program is everybody's
Okay.
school.
I think that's a very conservative political perspective. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. How do we know that it is or is not broken when we do not do schedule or periodically evaluate policies that we put in place? We don't know until somebody comes at public forum to tell us about that. I believe that it's critically important when a new procedure or policy is put in place that there is a date schedule to review it and to determine if it is or if it isn't working. And I believe that that's true from a lot of policies, programs, procedures, and things that we just put into place until there is a concern, and then that's when we want to react rather than respond to, is it broken or is it not? And I just believe that those kinds of things need to have a scheduled evaluation to take a look at them before somebody from the outside comes and tell us what's going on the inside.
Mr. Slayton?
All right, my second question, as I started. Do we have any type of chart, diagram, or anything that's available that's just kind of would smooth over that we're letting students out of school a month early? Because unfortunately, that's the way it was presented. And really, I thought that's not a good way to say this, that they're finished in April or May or March, or what is it?
Well, they're
not finished.
They're not finished. They
finished.
just.
But that's what was. But correct me. That's what was said.
Right. That's what was said, but that's not what we said.
That's okay. And so I think that we probably need to have something that says, no, we stop doing this, but we start doing this, because there was a comment about they had study groups. Well, then that's great. And that should be listed as seniors are doing this, and they take 12 exams? Is it, I heard double?
Well, it depends on, there are 7 IB exams, and then they mostly all take AP as well.
Okay, so all of that has to be, because it would be easier for the school, because I do come back to, this is not a board matter. This is a school matter.
Right.
And I think they need to be taking care of it. Now, if there's some communication problems there's a live and learn, we'll take care of that. But, we didn't have to set the policy once we adopted the IB program, which goes all the way back to J.P. Cone, if you even remember the name. But that's a long time ago. And so once the program was initiated, then it was between Pensacola High School, the director of the IB program, and they went on from there. We didn't tell them what they had to wear at graduation. We didn't tell them how many cords they could have, what kind of ribbons, and everything else. That's a school issue. And I want to leave this as a school issue. I think they can solve it. But I do think we do need to kind of have something ready to buffer those that are saying, wait a minute, how come they get out a month early? And I don't, well, they're not really getting out a month early when you can chart those things. We're taking this many exams and they take this amount of time. We're having study sessions for them. So if they're not doing, shall we say, 7 periods, they're doing all day 1 period. And that kind of takes care of my other thing about, are we okay with counting them? Well, yeah, if we know where they are, what they're doing, what their responsibilities are, yes, we can count them.
And over the years, the auditors have changed, and they may come in and say if they're not in a seat in that school, then, they can do that. They'll ask for our schedules. They'll ask for that IB schedule to see if they'll, and you never know. Mr. St. Cyr was my auditor years ago, and he was tough, but they may say, okay, you've proven this is instructional time, and yes, we can count it, or my friend Doug Diller tells us there are districts where they've come in and said, no, this is not acceptable. So that's the balance. And I want to make sure I let you know I don't think it's broken. I think it was time for a change, new leadership. They'd already been talking about it. Laura Brewer had a little bit because, again, it's a lot. And so I don't micromanage them either because they're good. They're good at what they do, and they have so much more. It's not just that, but many other things they're trying to manage with all this, because other students are going to be taking AP exams and all those other things that are going on. So, but it's a change, and I'll own that we need to do a better job of communicating. We can certainly do that. But they've been working on it for quite some time and have finalized it now, hopefully. We'll see. And I support that. I do. I appreciate your comments on it's an efficient way. Someone mentioned the word efficient. I think that's important too, because you can waste a lot of travel time, and that makes it stressful. And then things, that's just downtime. So I appreciate it. I know Mr. Hightower was going to comment on a couple of things. I'm going to stay here in case you need to ask me a question, but I know you have some.
Well, having both of my sons graduated from IB, I can attest to the fact that it has not always been done at UWF. In the early years of the program, they just tried to find locations wherever they could. I know he had exams at First Baptist Church in some of their rooms. But I think, I had a conversation with Dr. Smith, and I think it was a communication problem. But But I do want to take issue, and I do appreciate all of my board members talking about this, because as I always say to the parents that have children in our magnet programs, every one of the board members has somebody in those programs. And so you need to make sure that all of your board members know about it. But I think that it is a board issue in that a lot of money comes into the school district through the success of our students in IB and our students with AP, as well as certifications. But like, for instance, I asked Mr. St. Cyr for these numbers, and Ms. McCants provided them. Pensacola High School brought in $257,488 just to the school itself, not counting the amount that went to the teachers, which is $100,000 more than any of the other high schools. IB alone brought in $332,037.64. So in a way, it is a board issue. We want to do whatever we can to help those programs be successful. I think that the superintendent and Ms. Morgan have heard those issues. They have heard, and as a parent myself, I know that, you know, anytime you change what I thought was always what it was, you know, if I haven't had the opportunity to ask questions or find out what your reasoning is, then your brain starts doing all these things. They think that you're trying to get rid of the program. They think you're doing this, you think you're doing that, because nobody is sitting down with the parents and having those conversations. I've always been a parent advocate. I've always been the one that says, you got to tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it in order for them to understand. That doesn't mean that if they're unhappy, you have to change what you're doing, but you've at least explained it. And, you know, moving to Spencer Bibbs, they were concerned about parking, they were concerned about security, and, you know, just having communications with those parents to help them understand, we heard you, these things are going to happen. We are going to take care of that. Because I think if you point out the fact that we are so short-staffed right now, having it closer to allow more teachers to be able to help out with the proctoring, I mean, that makes sense to me. But that was not the way it was presented. It was just kind of presented, and nobody was able to ask questions, or at least that's my understanding. You know, that might not be true, but considering that the people that have talked with me are people who have been in the program or I know Ms. Odom has had experience with IB as well. So, you know, I think we just need to make sure that the administration is communicating with these parents of seniors, because truly, for 2 years, there has been no norm. There has been no norm. And so, in the education arena, anything that goes more than 3 years is normal. I mean, you know, if we change a schedule, you know, we've changed our calendar. Well, it was not that way last year. It's always been the other way. So we're our own worst enemies in some ways. But I think communication, we were joking up here before the meeting started, you know, using the cool hand Luke. It's a failure to communicate. And I think that we have to continually remind ourselves that we have to communicate with our customers.
Yes.
Because, you know, they want to come into this program. We have people who move here because of the IB program. And we are very successful in our support of the IB program and those students. And so that's, you know, Mr. Slayton's right. But we need to encourage those administrators that they need to be better at communicating with those parents. You know, there was an IB Connect meeting that was just canceled. It wasn't rescheduled. It was just canceled, and that set this all off.
It's confidential. I can't talk about an individual, but there was a very good reason and more communication to say we are going to have another meeting. But
yeah, but I'm just saying that was the way they saw it.
Right. been a lot of sickness going around, so we've been really shorthanded
Exactly.
at all levels at several schools, and administrators too. They get sick too, so we've had we've been having a lot of challenges with that. But one thing, as you made your remarks, I thought of, so many times somehow people they hear the district said, and I think that's one of the things I've seen in writing from that group as well as others. Who is the district and who said that? And I think we use that sometimes, saying the district. The school may say the district. Well, they think then.
Oh, that's why I got the call.
They
They said
think
it was
the
a district.
So
They said it was a school board policy. They
Right,
heard
yeah.
it was a school board policy.
And I've never heard school board mentioned in it, but they assume that because they don't know who the district, I mean, they look at all of us as the district, you're right. But I like I said, I think we can do a better job communicating, and then, some will accept it and some will still not be happy, but I think as long as we're providing the service and doing our job like we're supposed to, and the students are fabulous, and we want to serve them in the very best way. So, I mean, input's good. In the end, I trust them to make the right decision, and then we need to communicate it. So.
One more comment.
Yes, ma'am.
My older son, his senior year, took 13 exams. There were only like 15 or 18 days in May that they were going to be in school. So, that when you think about it that way, the number of exams and the number of days in actual instruction.
And that's a great point, because when we graduate early, which we are this year, you see our graduation dates are really early compared to the last couple of years. And then some of these students are, after we release seniors across the district, some of them are having to take an exam depending after, on that week after we release them. So that when we start pushing that graduation back early, which people love, but then in the end, those students are coming back on the time that we've allowed them to, seniors not to be in school and take the exam. So that's something you have to consider too. So it's hard to just put something on paper and say, this is the way it works, because as you pointed out, it's just so many different parts to that. And each student, what they're doing is so different. So it is a monumental task to get all that laid out and get it covered. And you think about it, you haven't heard of problems in the past. So they've done a phenomenal job for years and years, and students are successful. But the last 2 years, you're right. I want to reiterate. I just want to focus on that's been very unlike anything we could imagine, and we made it through it. So I think better times are coming, and we will certainly circle back. And I think there's a meeting tomorrow night.
Yep.
So hopefully, and it's virtual, but which is not always the best. I'm not big fans of virtual meetings either. You like to see faces and get people in the room, but because of the high numbers, I totally support that with the school because of the high numbers of COVID. So we want to get rid of COVID so we can do our job.
Paul?
Yeah, my intent is not to take authority away from the school or for those things, but it's the idea of having information to be able to in advance be able to answer a question intelligently, because we do get asked. We are responsible for everything that's wrong. We've done nothing to make anything right, and I know that's not true, but the heads up kind of thing. When the parents showed up the night that in the public forum and said that was the first I heard of anything being different. And therefore, there's been, to be forewarned is to be forearmed and be able to answer questions.
Let me send you all my email.
No, I've been there, done that, and that's why I'm not there.
We try to take as much as we can off of you too, but I understand you have to answer to the community, and we can.
And I do know that change happens, and it doesn't mean the end of the world. It's things different. But there needs to be a reason for it, not just because it makes my life easier and it might make everybody else's terrible, okay? A reasonable thing. COVID, staffing, place, travel, all that, yes. Knowing those things, knowing that in advance, giving people that information ahead of time solves everything.
And I do want to publicly thank our IB parents, because they're always willing to step up and do whatever we need them to do, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Eber, any other comments?
Yes.
Well, before he goes, I want to make one comment while I got it. I think it's very important that if you use this Macmillan School, that it goes perfectly well. as good, Spencer Bibbs.
Bibbs.
Spencer Bibbs, I'm sorry. And because that IB program is a tough program, it is competitive, and it's competitive for us to stay in to make them parents feel comfortable, because those kids are leading up all the way up to that last set of tests for what they're going to do. So please, let's make sure whatever, if you decide to go with this other facility, that it's just as good as UWF.
And we've
Okay?
tested there with all of our virtual in the past, so we've had
Okay.
more virtual students there than we've had. We'll have 85 or so IB, so we've used it for several years now. The virtuals moved out to George Stone, so they have a bigger testing area, and that works better for them. But, so we've not had issues. But,
Okay.
short of having to lock down, and that happens, in the community. I mean, that could happen. I hope it doesn't, but those are the kind of things. But we have security there. It's our own it's our security. So I think we have more control over that facility than we do any other outside facility, and that makes me feel better.
Okay.
Because we've got a team of people here that you call and they're on it immediately, whether it's technology or campus security or whatever. So I feel good about that, but I understand what you're saying. I mean,
Right.
it's a great location.
IB
But just the parking is my
important to Skin
concern.
County School District. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, I understand. And
And I
that's true with all of our students in testing. We want them to have the best environment
True,
ever.
but yes, but IB is important. And I appreciate you bringing it up, Paul, and it's a way for us, Sunshine, we don't get a chance to talk, so a lot of times we don't hear about something unless we get an email or a phone call, and then we have to call superintendent, and I don't know what the other board members know, so excellent discussion. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, and Ms. Morgan, thank you. You've provided a lot of helpful information. There are a number of items here, and I will preface this, having been a high school principal for 8 years at an IB school, very comparable to the same size as Pensacola. We generally, my experience was about 90 students in the senior class taking exams for an IB diploma. So there are two components to this. One is the timeline with the calendar, and the other being the location. The timeline, what started happening is going back to the FTE, and in our understanding in some districts, that was beginning to be looked at for programs that ended prior to the last day of school. For example, if your seniors are dismissed X number of days before the end of the school, how does that play out with FTE? So that was a concern. We've looked into that. We've discussed that matter. It looks like the current schedule we have for when IB students would transition into that testing mode we're going to be fine to do that as it has been done in the past. So that's good news. The reason for that, I think, Mr. Slayton, you brought up a good point. How it comes across is, oh, you're just done with school. And that is I understand exactly the point you raised on that, because that can, other students who aren't in IB, what does that look like? It goes back to the foundation of IB. IB was really originated in an international setting where a lot of people who traveled or would move on a frequent basis, maybe a diplomat, a foreign diplomat who's here and then a couple of years later there, families were calling for a highly rigorous program that was consistent. And so they knew if it was an IB program in the Philippines, it's the same as an IB program in France, or the United States of America. So that was kind of the drive of where the IB program came. It is a highly rigorous program, to the point where the IB diploma, which is earned through these exams, students earn points off of these exams, and literally, if they cross over a total point number, they earn an IB diploma. It is very prestigious. It is very difficult to earn that, and it means a lot. So we want as many students to be successful with earning that diploma as possible. That's always the goal. And that metric is very much tracked from year to year. That's one of the program effectiveness metrics. So that goes into the testing. Now, keep in mind, students who have certain scores on these IB exams also are awarded college credit. So that's chipping away at their bachelor's degree. And that's a very important factor as well. So I share that with you. We have a highly intensive, rigorous program. College credit can be earned, an IB diploma can be earned. And what that does is it kind of couches it in a more collegiate framework. And so this naturally kind of mirrors when we draw a line and say, okay, we're done with our classwork. The next couple weeks are going to be IB exams and AP exams. Now, where some students will say, well, I've got 2 AP exams, that's rigorous as well. Certainly an intensive experience. The IB students have a number of IB exams, so they're taking a lot of exams, but they also may be taking AP exams because certain courses they may take that aren't necessarily IB courses. So they can earn college credit from the AP or the IB. Now that happens where their schedule is free because their schedule does have a lot of IB courses in it. Point being with that is it is very much, I would say it's very similar to a college framework where you go in this day you take that exam, this day you take that exam, and they have so many. It makes sense to have that collegiate-like structure. The other functional part of that is the IB students are taking so many exams because your AP and your IB exams are happening intermingled, yes, during the same time frame, right? So you may have a student, let's say if they're taking, their IB of America's class, okay? That class will probably be half empty, maybe even more, because a bunch of students are taking an exam on this one. The next day, another bunch of students are taking another exam. So it's very difficult for a functional classroom just with having all the students show up to class because of the intensive and frequent exam schedule. So there's a functional part of that too that impacts, where it's very hard for a teacher to teach a lesson to 50% of the class, and then when is my other 50 going to get back in? But really, they've taught what they needed to teach for the exams already. And then you also have teachers who are helping with the proctoring as well. So my experience was a massive scheduling of rooms, of locations for the IB test and the AP test, and I will tell you that every year was a puzzle because there were so many kids taking one IB and AP. And so you sometimes creatively look for what's the best testing environment. One year, we rolled a tarp out in the gym, and we tested hundreds of students in the gym. We didn't like that. We didn't feel that was. It worked because all the other testing rooms were full, right, with other AP tests and IB tests, and we thought that might work. We tried it. It was okay, but we wanted it better. It didn't meet our requirements for a testing environment, so we didn't do that next year. But next year we had to figure out where are we going to, we have more tests than rooms, so we have to be very creative. And And that's challenging. That is absolutely challenging. But my point being is every year it was a new design on what to do. And so certainly the principal needs to be able to, and the team needs to be able to coordinate. I would say the second piece of this, the location, what you really want to do with the location is, here's in essence, here are the requirements, or almost like a rubric. Here's what we need for a pristine testing environment. And you either meet that or you don't. And so it's what the team at Pensacola High School, they're mindful of. These are the elements that we need in a classroom, and if we can do it here, we can do it here. It'll work wherever we can find the appropriate space for it. So, because what you want is you want a quiet environment, you want adequate space. Parking's going to be an issue, unless it were to be done on campus, but it's not. Security is going to be an issue, so the team has parking. They've organized that with the church on the corner. There's a security person on campus, on Spencer Bibbs. Security guard will be on Spencer Bibbs' property, and it's very quiet there. So, and we have some nice rooms there. So those are things as a principal you're going to think of. These are the things I need to have the best testing environment I can. And where that is certainly is a major factor, but the goal is to have that pristine testing environment. The other piece on this is it's always advantageous to do it on a district property. That's a great thing that we have. We've spent a lot of money on classrooms and facilities and keeping them up. It behooves us to use those facilities. So that's just another plus there too, and a good thing if we can do that. So there's a Connect meeting, the IB Connect meeting, and I believe it is tomorrow night. And so information will be coming out to the parents through that meeting as to these two issues. And I think the good thing is we're well ahead of the timeline, because this won't happen till the end of this current semester. So we've got time, which is a good thing. And I think we'll come in at a nice landing spot. But certainly important topics. And again, we certainly want the very best that we can provide for our IB students. They've worked very hard, and we want them, if 80% had IB diplomas the previous year, we want it higher than 80%. We'd love to see 100% of our IB seniors earn that IB diploma. That would be a great thing. And we've got a good opportunity for a very high percentage this year. And we want the very best for our students, and certainly appreciate the IB parents. Their support has been incredible. It's been steadfast, and we do want them to be comfortable with where things are as well. So IB Connect meeting tomorrow night will be the first step forward with getting some of that communication going, and then we'll go from there, depending upon how that all is settled, or what additional steps we need to take to move forward.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other discussion? Okay. One more item. Commissioner Bergosh is having a town hall this evening. It's at Perdita Bay United Methodist Church, 5:30 to 7 p.m. I have been invited to attend with them and Vicki Campbell for ECUA. So that'll be our first town hall in the new areas that we gained from the redistricting. Okay. General Counsel, anything? Okay. All right. If all satisfied, we're adjourned.